Yes, guys, we are back in the building. You're in the B1 office for episode 7 of the Mindset Tune-Up Show. And absolutely pumped to be back. Even more pumped to have the guest on tonight that I have, obviously a dear friend of mine, but also someone that is just phenomenal in knowledge and in what he does. And I'm really excited to kind of talk with him tonight on a variety of things. Before we jump in, guys, obviously there's been a bit of a break in the Mindset Tune-Up Show. It's not actually been on since I had my hernia operation. And there were just a few projects, few things that I had to focus in on. And one of the big things that I talk about a lot is priorities and understanding what your priorities in life are. And I just had to take a step back and make sure I was stabilizing my life. And that's something that I always endorse, which is understanding what your priorities are in life, focusing on them. And that's how you start to stay in control. If you have too many things going on at once, it can start to create quite a bit of overwhelm. So just kind of stepping back sometimes, understanding what is taking priority, what the actions for that are, and then suddenly you'll find momentum. And here we are. So finding momentum again. We're back on the Mindset Tune-Up Show. We've got some good guests lined up for the weeks to come as well. And yeah, I'm just super pumped to kind of get this back going. So guys, just before we bring Kev in and talk a little bit about Kev, we do have obviously a few B1 things that we want to shout out. So obviously we've got the B1 podcast. So please, guys, check us out on the B1 podcast. Definitely on Spotify. We're dropping quite a lot on that. Yeah, it's on the screen now, guys, jumping on. Obviously, we've got the B1 Instagram channel now as well. So, guys, please give us a follow on that and give us a check out. And lastly, obviously, the Mindset Tune-Up Show is going to be rocking regularly from now on. And also, we're going to be dropping videos on our YouTube channel. So, guys, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And obviously, you're going to get notifications when our videos drop and also when our super guests come on to the Mindset Tune-Up Show as well. So, guys, the aim of the Mindset Tune-Up is about bringing guests in that have some empowering knowledge that I personally feel can help people have a more positive, empowering life. And I think that as I talk so much about mindset, it's about where you are focusing your mind. And as I've talked very recently in a few posts on Instagram, we all have negative thoughts. It's not about eradicating negative thoughts because they're always going to be there. Same with emotions. And if you saw the clip that I dropped with Kev, he spoke very powerfully from a book talking about emotions. And he was talking about embracing all emotions, both positive and negative, because even though they may be classed as negative, they are still a sign, they're still showing the body something. And guys, this is something that we're going to delve into tonight as well as a lot of other things. But the point that I kind of want to bring about is when you face adversity, when you face negativity, whatever it may be, it's still within your control what you focus on. Okay. It's still within your control whether you let your mind stray and focus in on that negativity so that it overwhelms you and encapsulates you and takes you to areas that you don't want to go, or whether you are strong enough to take control of your mindset and focus it in to the things that are going to empower your life. And one of those things is breath work and understanding the body and the power of the breath a lot more. And this gentleman tonight, Kev, is, like I said at the start, a dear friend. His knowledge is profound. He still blows me away in the conversations that we have. And I'm going to bring him into the studio now. And we're just going to have a little introduction. Here is the man himself, Mr. Kevin O'Neill from Brevolution. How you doing, Kev?
Hi, hello. How are you? You okay?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Good. Wow.
What an intro, mate.
What an intro. What an intro. I've got it out of you now. I've got it. You got to speak now for the next hour.
Yeah, God, I can do. You know, I can do that.
I think I want to drop us in by just talking about the new land that you've got, Kev, because I think that it's something that is blown me away, and I'm lucky enough to obviously run elements with yourself. And I'm lucky enough to have seen it, but what you have created in that space for Brevolution is absolutely profound. And I think that the dome, the area you've got, the river, the space, the things you've done to it, it's such a stunning area. Can you just talk a little bit about what, not necessarily where this land is, but what this land is like, what it means to you, what you've created, and obviously what you now run from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so originally I had a sort of big bell tent up there in the first place, but myself and a friend of mine, Damien Healy, my brother, he's a beautiful guy, and yeah, he bought some of these pods, and he's allowed me to use one to put one up there, and I fit about 20 people in one of them. They're big. It's like the Eden
Yeah.
Project, they're just a small version of it. But I don't know, they're really acoustic, and they're just really airy and light and bright, and they're perfect for breath work, and they're perfect for sound, and they're perfect for hearing yourself as well. So if you sit in the middle, they're so acoustic, you can kind of hear your own breath. It's amazing. It's an amazing space, and yeah, the river is just beautiful. It's in Buxworth, and yeah, some good friends of mine have allowed me to sort of use their land, and it's perfect. It's right on the river, and it's not too deep in the river. It's just about waist high, but it's just sort of sat right in nature. It's perfect. You know, there's badgers, and I saw a deer there the other day. There's geese and baby geese and little kingfishers, and man, it's an amazing office, mate. I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful.
I think one of the guys that you had in, I think it's James, has just popped up in the comments now, and I think he came in with you the other day. There's his comment. Liam's just brought it up.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he loved it. Loved it there. Beautiful. Had a great. Yeah.
But I think, like you say, it's the obviously that was in the tent, but when you first took me into the dome, it had a phenomenal feeling to it. And the setup in there now, it's so homely. But like you say, the sound is so unique in what it does. So I can only imagine. I mean, I've seen you hold a short breath session in there for people. But obviously, I've not been in for some of the longer ones that you do kind of individually or in some of the Breathevolution groups. But I can only imagine kind of like the effect that has on the body and the mind, and how kind of that obviously enhances the breathing. And I say that because when I came and met you the other week and you started to play some music to me, and the music changed, and the sound was so profound in the dome. I keep calling it a dome, but is that right to say the dome, or is it? Yeah.
Yeah. They're from a company in America called Pacific Domes. And they come in various sizes. They use them at events, these massive ones that hold about 100 people, just varying different sizes. This one holds probably about sort of 20 people, I would imagine. But it's just a perfect size, really, ideally for about sort of 10 people. So these workshops that I'm doing now, they're going to be for around about sort of 10 people comfortably, to run these workshops from.
So in terms of, because I think delving into the breath's going to be an absolute tonight, and I think we've had some phenomenal conversations. And again, there's never a time where I meet you and you don't reinforce something to me about the breath, or teach me something new about the breath. Even this morning in a voice note, Kev was banging on at me about the breath just because I was a little bit sore throaty and groggy. I think I've been burning the ends, all work related and training related. But again, Kev was giving me some reminders about how important the breath is, and breathing and taping up at night and things like that. So it's like I've got a god on my shoulder all the time giving me powerful tips. But in terms of the workshops then, Kev, what are they aimed at now? So just to kind of get an understanding of, if someone's, obviously you've put respiratory health within kind of like the promotion for it, and that kind of can range from a wide range of aspects, but then you also kind of touch into potential mental aspects that are connected to the breath. So if people are feeling anxiety or like nervous or worried, PTSD and all these kind of things that are obviously related, are the workshops literally for anyone that can benefit from them, and what potentially could they expect without giving too much away from what they would experience on the day itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke about this the other day about me sort of, keeping a little bits of information away from social media, because I like to just leave people to be sort of not shocked, but surprised when they come and do the sessions. I don't want to give too much away, really.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter now, because no matter what you hear on here or what you hear on Instagram, once you get into the space, it's different. So you'll hear it differently.
Yeah.
But just to go back, all the way to the beginning, it started off as cold water. It started off as me guiding people into water because they were losing their breathing, and it started off with me sort of helping them using the Wim Hof technique and various others to get people to be in control of their breathing in the cold. But my work has kind of organically, it's just moved in its own direction and it's done its own thing, and I've just had to sort of follow along with it, which is why I needed to get a qualification in Buteyko. And the reason I chose Buteyko was because it's science based, and I'm quite sciencey. I'm not overly spiritual. I was thinking about it at the time. I thought, do I go to Greece and do I, do I go, to India to study pranayama, and do I spirituality and the breath and prana and life force in the body, or do I just stick to science? And because I was an asthmatic, I thought I went for Buteyko. So primarily, I'm a breath coach, Ben, and that's when anybody ever meets me. I'm Breathevolution. I'm a breathing instructor. Okay, so I work with people with respiratory health issues and other health issues that are connected to chronic hyperventilation, or just biomechanics that are not quite right, or maybe wearing clothing that's a bit too tight, or over breathing too much as part of your role. So, this benefits everybody. I've met thousands of people in the last 2 years. I've worked individually with about sort of 12 or 1300 people, and I've never met anybody that doesn't sort of overbreathe at certain points, and most people are overbreathing all the time, and they're making themselves, I wouldn't say poorly, but they're certainly not at homeostasis, and they're not as healthy as they would be if they were breathing more correctly, or if they were more breath aware. It would certainly make a difference to the physiology, to the health, to the mental and physical health. And breathing's everything. Excuse me. The first thing you do when you're born is you breathe.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing that we do more than anything else before we die, is we breathe.
Yeah.
The most thing, the most consumable that we get through is air.
Yeah.
Yet we pay no attention to it. And why? Why is that? We soon eat and we soon drink, but we pay no attention to breathing. So that needs to change. I know I've gone all over the place with that, Ben, but
no, mate, you haven't. This is what it's here for. This is exactly what it's about, Kev.
It needs to change that. It needs to be curriculum. People need to know how their bodies are working. People need to know that when their bodies are doing a certain thing and they feel a certain thing, that it's not always something to be afraid of. It's just something that the body does. Go with it and be in it and feel it, and don't judge it. Just go with it and then find out what it is, rather than not understanding your body and panicking and getting into panic disorder and anxiety because you don't understand how you're feeling. Everybody should know.
I feel like that's one of the reasons, kind of like, to go to a coach like yourself. And I think like hearing you speak then was really powerful, because I think like without going down the avenue of money, like that's why food and drink is, do you know what I mean? Number one, it brings quick positive emotions, just to be able to consume it. Whether it's alcohol or whether it's sugary foods, it's giving you a hit to feel good. But also there's money to be made off it, and that's why it's pushed out there so much. Generally not a lot of money to be made off people selling air, so it's never been talked about before until, again, breath comes into place. But I think that knowing you as well as I do now, Kevin, and knowing a lot about your history and your journey, I think when you talk about making the decision to go the science route, which is one thing that absolutely stands out massively about yourself, which is your scientific knowledge on the breath and the body. But what I think is more empowering that a lot of people might not know is that you already have a very strong spiritual knowledge and background. So it's not that you didn't, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong here, Kev, because I feel like I'm speaking for you, but I think that it's not that you didn't decide to go down the spiritual route with the breath. I feel that personally, you already had a very good understanding of spiritual side and religion, but you wanted to go down because you said something very powerful to me once, and I think we've mentioned this in a Instagram live before. Because I'm down more of the spiritual route, but for my own personal reasons. And I think that's one of the great things about me and you, which is that we can have a conversation and not necessarily disagree, but be open-minded enough to hear the other person and hear their views and communicate and share references and share new knowledge. And it's a really empowering friendship to have that, when you can share something with someone, and even if they disagree, they take it on board, they listen to it, and they can give their perspective, and it creates a very empowering conversation and relationship. But I feel like that gave you a greater depth to be able to go into the science qualifications and background that you now have, but actually with already having a fairly spiritual side to you and knowledge side to you. So I think you still have a whole. You can still surround it, because some of the things you've told me have been on both sides of the spectrum. But again, in terms of the one comment that never leaves my head is when you said to me, "Yeah, but Ben, our feet are on the ground." And I think it's when I was going probably a little bit woo-woo in some of my thinking in spiritualness, and we were talking about people with mental health and stuff like that, and you kind of gave me a real punch in a good way, and it was just to remind me, like, that might be you, Ben, but you've got to remember, a lot of these people, feet are on the ground on this earth right now. They are breathing right now. The breath is affecting their biochemistry in their body right now. What's most important to help them? And it kind of really helped me reframe a lot of the work I do, in terms of, Ben, remember, not everything you are doing on yourself is for everyone. And it was quite, probably haven't told you how much that stuck with me as a coach, but it was important for me to remember. But I feel like a lot of what you do now, and I'm going to go back into what you were saying then, because I think it's important to go into, but again, the key things you told me, how many voice notes you leave a day for work, Ben? How often are you coaching through the day? And when you're coaching, you're speaking. When you're speaking, you're generally breathing through the mouth. So one of the words you talked about then was the word aware. You mentioned the word aware, breath awareness. And I think since I've met you, that is one thing that, so even speaking now, I'm obviously noticing that I'm breathing from my mouth. But what I do when I stop is I'll breathe through my nose. If I'm out walking with my dogs or I've got Jacks on my back, I'm very conscious and aware. I'll force my lips shut. And this is something I've consciously now become more attuned to, that much that it's habitual. It's more habitual for me to breathe from my nose than it is my mouth. But I can guarantee before I met you, it was the other way around. And that's having the ability to be determined enough to stick with something until it becomes a habit, basically, which is a big kind of philosophy of mine. But this is what you're talking about here, which is, right, I'm trying to create awareness around the breath and how impactful it is to the body. So in terms of the workshops, Kev, obviously you're going to be going through some breath kind of coaching and exercises with them, but you will also be talking quite a bit around an educational piece of breath that they can take away, make it relatable, make it applicable, and apply to their life.
So, yeah, I think, yeah, just going back on what you said then about learning from one another, and we're both coaching people to change their habits, I suppose, and get into good habits, and sort of, break these bad habits that have been sort of tripping them up, which takes time. Nothing comes overnight with this, and breath is no different. You want to go to a breath session and puff and pant and breathe away and come away and take something away from that, then that's fine. If you want to go and do a Wim Hof session, do a lot of deep, heavy, sympathetic drive breathing, get into cold water, fine, absolutely. It works. It's amazing. It's, the stressor exercises on the body. It puts your body into sympathetic drive. It releases adrenaline and does all those things so that your body can make adaptation and repair afterwards. But some people can't do that. And not only that, some people, they don't want to do that. They want to understand what's going on in the body at the time. And I think that's probably what a lot of people are missing, is the elephant in the room is being breath aware and understanding what the breath is doing. So the workshops are designed to go all the way back to the beginning, to go all the way back to birth, where you take that first breath You know, what happens in that moment as an organism as you take your first breath. And your body remembers it. The body keeps the score. As per the book, you know, by Bessel van der Kolk, it remembers. Although cognitively we don't remember. And I said to you the other day, if a baby was a week old or a couple of days old and the brain was strong enough or powerful enough or knowledgeable enough to speak and talk to you and remember, and you asked it, what was it like in the womb? They'd explain what it was like. But it's just not cognitive, but the body remembers that. Just because the brain doesn't, don't think that, you know, we've evolved to this by not the body not being able to remember where it was a week ago. You
There's
know?
a part there's a part of there's a part of the brain that operates the body without consciously operating it. So, but what I mean by that, like you're talking there about logical thinking, but as soon as we're born as a baby, our digestive system works, our heart beats, our lungs breathe.
Yeah.
And like you say, we're not telling them to do that. The mind already knows, a part of the mind, a part of that brain already knows to do this. And that's kind of exactly where you're coming from there. It's like we're waiting for a logical form of sense. But what's unfortunate, Kev, is, and I might be tangenting here, but it's really interesting as you're speaking. I always have questions. Cheers, James, for your comment as well, mate. It means a lot, that. Thank you. But does the world then consume us, Kev? In terms of, which I think I generally know the answer, but the world then consumes us to breathe. And when I say the world has changed a lot. So this day and age is completely different. So is it naturally now transforming the way we breathe for the negative? And is the way forward to kind of try to implement this at a youngest? Because that's something I need to shout out, which is I've pushed Jax's mouth shut if he's asleep and he's breathing with his mouth open. And a lot of people might be like, fucking hell, that's a 1-year-old kid, what are you doing? And I'm like, he's gonna breathe through his nose as soon as I push his lips shut.
Sure.
And I read, it was a book I read, and they talk about, I think it was somewhere in Africa, I could be wrong though, and they literally seal their baby's mouth shut at night. They literally they literally seal them shut. So they are being trained from a young age to make sure they continue to breathe through the nose. But do you think maybe in a Western society, due to whatever reasons, unfortunately, we do go to more mouth breathing into chest? Would it be right in saying chest breathing rather than diaphragmatic and stomach breathing, as obviously you start to develop, whereas it should be stuck with breath? Because what's really interesting, one last thing, is a personal trainer. When I did personal training, again, the technique is to breathe into the diaphragm, to breathe into the stomach before you brace. So even from that scenario, from a science perspective, the breath is to be taken to the diaphragm and the stomach and held whilst you exert. But what is it about life that transitions that to make us breathe quicker, breathe faster, breathe for the mouth, breathe into the chest?
Yeah, well, loads of factors in that. Softer foods, high sugar foods, lifestyle, and just environment in general. You know, so if you think of a human being as an organism, you know, look at the environment. All right, this is going on in the animal kingdom as well. You know, if you go into the jungle, they have alarm calls and they have stressful environments, then things are relaxed and peaceful. Human beings now, especially in the West, we're more, and I'm not talking about indigenous tribes and, like, you know, in tribes in Africa like you were speaking about there, because they're still way behind and they don't have social media and internet and as many problems and emails and stressful situations. We've created the environments that we're in, and the body has to make adaptation to that. So when we're overbreathing because we're opening our emails, the same part of the body, the same part of the nervous system that's reacting, overbreathing and getting panicky and anxious over those emails, is the exact same nervous system in Africa that gets frightened when a tiger walks past the camp. It's no different. The only thing is that we're not running from tigers. We're opening emails, but the body doesn't understand that. It still puts you into fight or flight. It still puts you into sympathetic drive. It still releases adrenaline in the body, and you'll get you to overbreathe. It'll prepare you to get away from something that isn't there. And that's a pandemic. This is the origins of anxiety, is because of the environments that we create for ourselves now in the West, by pressure, stress, work, expectations of trying to improve and better ourselves and reach things that are sometimes probably unobtainable, and dreams, pipe dreams or whatever, but we make ourselves anxious in trying to get to them. And we don't look after ourselves, but we're definitely over breathing too much. But the thing is that the body is form, it's object and it's form, and so is the brain. But the mind isn't. It's energy and it's chemicals. It's different. But absolutely 100% on this. The only thing that connects form to form, in other words, that connects the brain to the body, is the breath. And the sooner people realize that, they've known about this for thousands of years. You slow your breathing down. You make your breath light. The less you breathe, the longer you'll live.
It's interesting that there's some natural things that we do that show the body kind of knows. So, like, for example, like if something goes wrong and potentially you get a bit of bad news maybe, and it's not an immediate shock in front of you, but you just receive some bad news or whatever it is, or it's just one of them, and it is a natural, like, do you know what I mean? It's like there's certain things we do with the breath, like I didn't consciously, like I did then, but do you know what I mean? Or even sometimes I used to do it. I used to get quite travel sick, me, and I didn't really know about the breath then. But naturally in the car, I'd kind of just start going.
Sure.
I'm talking 8 years old, 7, 8 years old. It's why when we used to go on family trips in the car for 4 or 5 hours, and I was always sick, mate. I was horrendously travel sick. But I remember doing that because it stuck with me, and it was me trying to slow me, always being from my nose. It would always be from my nose, and then it'd be kind of generally out from my mouth, though. But again, I wouldn't have known that was the right thing to do. My body just knew that was a way to potentially calming me down, because when I get car sick, I used to get that anxious because I'd hated sick and wanted to feel sick, and I'd get nervous with it. So I'd probably be panicking, and my body was like, right, I need to make Ben relax. I need to make myself relax. So it kind of brought me to that. But I think what to bring that up is, like, you're talking there about opening emails and things happening from day to day, and can we implement that there? And how powerful, because this is something that I feel is powerful as well, which again, a lot of people will jump out of bed in the morning and crack on with the day. But how powerful, and this isn't even saying if you have something going on that's bad in your life. So I'm not even saying if you're stressed, but to wake up in the morning, and I'm not advising this, guys. I'm asking Kev this question, by the way. This isn't me coaching. But to wake up in the morning, no matter whether you're in a good or bad state, to sit up, maybe, Kev, or lie down and just focus on the breath for 2 to 3 minutes, is that priming the body in a good way? If you did it, like you say, slow breaths in for the nose, out for the mouth, is that a good way to start and prime the day? Would that make you more consciously aware maybe through the day as well? All the techniques like that, or is that not a good way to start the day?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer that, really, because depending on what it is that you want from the day, if you want to be a bit more focused, if you want to be a bit more alert, if you want to be less frightened at work, then it might not be a bad idea to breathe into sympathetic drive in the morning, which is this Tumo Wim Hof style breathing. And if you breathe like that in the morning, it kind of gets the body ready for sympathetic drive. But you do have to sort of go back to parasympathetic afterwards. You have to, it's like yin and yang. You can't always be in sympathetic drive. You have to wind it in. But if you do overbreathe, or if you hyperventilate, do hyperventilation techniques early in the morning before you go to work, then you're allowing your body to make adaptation for that. So when you get to work, when you open those emails, your body's already kind of had a bit of a round of that in the morning already, so you're kind of a little bit more ready for it. So you're kind of priming your environment ready. So that's why hyperventilation techniques are good to do. As long as, like we mentioned, when your clients are exercising in the gym, when they've done an hour's training and they've worked hard and they've been over breathing and they've been in sympathetic drive, they've released epinephrine, adrenaline, and they've been like that for an hour, it's a good idea as a coach to settle them in 15 minutes, a bit like shavasana in yoga. Yeah, that we spoke about, didn't we? We spoke about this.
Yeah.
And get them to lie down, feel the body, get them to slow their breathing down.
Yeah.
Really slow their breathing down and get back into parasympathetic state. Otherwise, they could walk out of the gym all revved up.
Yeah.
You know, somebody cuts them up in traffic, you know, you're still in fight or flight.
Yeah.
You're still, your peripherals and your body, your autonomic nervous system is still in that fight or flight mode. You might go home and start arguing with the kids or be short with people. So bring yourself back down from that state. And that's no different when you wake up in the morning. It's a good idea to breathe slow to set yourself up for your day. But sometimes, you know, if you know you've got a hard day ahead, might not be a bad idea to just put yourself into a bit of sort of self-guided sympathetic drive. You know,
this is why I love chatting to you, Kevin. Again, it's kind of like it's no different than me and you just chatting normally, which is I find always phenomenal. Because again, that's a great example of what I talked about before, where me and Kev can come in and have a conversation and help transition each other's beliefs or ways of thinking about something. So Kev's really done that to me there, because I think that you've hit a nail on the head, because the times that I have done quite powerful breath work, and there's one I'm doing in the minute, but I'm doing it in the evening. I think I've taught you through an affirmations meditation that I do, but at the time I'm listening to it, I'm and when I finish that, it's 21 minutes long, and throughout that I pause 3 times, just exhaling and a couple of things. But at the end of it, I then go into just a relaxed inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, or exhale through the nose, whichever one it is, and slow. And the transition in me is absolutely phenomenal. And you've woke me up to the fact that actually in the morning that would be just as powerful, because I think one thing that I noticed, one of the major reasons I like breath work and meditation in the evening is because I used to be so bad at sleeping because of the thoughts in my head. Like I really struggled to go to sleep because of negative overthinking, worrying. I'd be up to the birds with tweeting in the morning, Kev, like literally horrendous. So you start to utilize meditation and breath work, and it transitioned that for me. It truly did. And I think that utilizing it in the morning would just be the same. And why I'm saying it is because, again, I'm using it in the evening to control my thoughts, to slow my mind down. But why the fuck not do that in the morning? Like, why not in the morning do the same thing, prime yourself? Because as soon as you do that, it's like and again, you said this the other day on an element session, and you were talking to the group, and you said when you first start to do this, your body is going to start to say, I can't be arsed doing this. It's too much effort. Sack this off. And every time I sit down in the evening to do that, Kev, I promise you, mate, within the first and my jaw starts going a bit, and I'm like, oh, Ben, man, not this again. Like, why are you doing this? Like, the fucking thoughts come in, but by the end of it, my mind is clear. My mind is clear. So my point being, if I did that in the morning, not only is it priming the body, it's literally clearing potential any worrying thoughts or anxiety in the morning. And when we say worrying or anxiety, it can be cling to anything. And that's why I'm big on not looking at my phone till about 10 a.m. really in the morning, unless it's something specific, because I get one text can fire X, Y, Z, so I stay away. But I think this is a powerful thing to think about. So, yeah, no, sorry, mate. I went on a bit of a tangent then, but I think
no, you're absolutely spot on. And just going on to these negative thoughts, and talking about negative thoughts. I don't know whether I'd heard it or I'd read it, but another way of thinking about being mindful is that the negative thoughts are anxieties. I've never met any human being that isn't anxious. Everybody on this earth suffers from anxiety. It's the makeup of mammals. We're all anxious because if we weren't anxious, we'd probably be dead by now.
Yeah.
Every human being is anxious because the catastrophizing mind and worrying mind is the only thing that keeps us alive. So we're all anxious. So let's just put that to bed. It doesn't exist, anxiety,
Yeah.
because everybody has it. So it's not
Yeah.
something that you have. You can become more anxious through overbreathing. You can become more anxious through drinking too much coffee, which makes you overbreathe. You can be anxious because of chemicals, drugs, alcohol, things that affect homeostasis in the body, which change the way that you breathe and change your blood pressure. But these thoughts that come into their head, the next one that pops in, sort of like when you're trying to breathe like that, smile at it. Thank you. Thanks. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep me safe. I know. But I'm going to keep breathing anyway. I know what you're trying to do, and I know it feels shit. Thank it. Yeah, I'll just say the word yes. Yes. I see you. And I know what you're doing, but I'm going to keep going. And this is all about just being able to observe thoughts. The word observe is important rather than being your thoughts. And this is obviously what the work that we do all the time. But putting the body under stress and pressure is what gives you the ability to know the difference between the two. And like we spoke in the past as well, on the lives and stuff, about these people that went out like Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad and Buddha, these people that disappeared and sat with themselves for months on end on their own. But they discovered how to observe their thoughts and not attached to anything, not attached to one thought. And that's how they came out as these enlightened people, because they found true presence. Because we're living the dream world, we're living the catastrophizing movement of the mind. That's what's happening. And it's the hardest thing to ever try and live with, But the more you do it, the more you understand it. But unfortunately, it costs you time.
It does, mate. It does. But at the same time, I think that it's funny that Liam's popped that comment up, because I saw that before, and James was meaning it more to do with the breath, but I think even that fits in with what we just talked about now, because I don't know whether this conversation, I've had this before with you, Kev, but when I moved away from Stockport, so I now live probably about a 30-minute drive. So when I'm over at my gym that I own, which is only a couple of times a week now, you're talking about a 25-minute journey. And in the evenings, especially when I finish and I drive home, and this goes back to again, the ability to not get caught up. And I think I can come back in some states where I'm just driving the car and I'm so relaxed and present and in a good emotional and mental state that I can literally, the word observe is the perfect one. And I'm being present enough to look, because there's some absolutely stunning scenery. I'm going over a top road, through fields and just looking at hills and all that kind of around me. And a thought comes in, and I do have the ability just to kind of keep driving. And smile is a good word. Sometimes something will come into my mind and I'll smile at it, or I'll let it pass, and all these things. And again, I've learned to be able to do this, but I can't do it all the time. And that's why self-development for me is an ongoing process. And I've always said that I had 30 years before I started to understand and learn this process. So it's not going to take 6-7 years to transition. But I am blessed to be in a place where I do have moments where I can observe thoughts. And the empowerment you feel as a human when you do that is absolutely phenomenal. And I don't think you can describe it to someone until they realize that. And so when you literally can observe a thought or a thought process and just feel, sometimes it is a smile. It is a smile, or it's just a nice warm feeling inside. It's like you've just achieved something. It's hard to explain, but I think it's very powerful, kind of like you're talking about that. And I think that's again why myself and you align a lot, Kev, because a lot of the work that we do, and even just a lot of the stuff that we research, Kev, what with the stuff that we read, the stuff that we watch, it all aligns, it all works in together. And yeah, just I think that, but because I think one other thing that I want to bring up to do with this, Kev, which is because I've had this chat with another guest, and it was an interesting one because technology nowadays is important, and I'm not here to say technology is damaging the world, because I think it's enhancing it, and I think technology will keep the world and humans alive and surviving. I truly do. And I think thankfully there has been a switch in humanity now to make sure technology potentially goes in the right way. But there has to be control from the individual. There has to be control from an individual to understand whether they are in control of technology or technology is in control of them. So social media is important for myself. It's important for my businesses, and it's also important for me as a person, because when I transitioned as a human and as an identity, actually social helped me find ground in myself. It helped me build belief in myself. It was like I could make statements about myself that reaffirmed to me who I am, because I was being quite proud to say it. I know it didn't need to be out loud with it. I could say it to myself and feel comfortable, but it did give me that platform. So my point being is, like, there is a pro to tech as well as a negative to tech. And when I say tech, I just mean kind of anything like televisions, I'm talking screens, things that consume us, and potentially do, like you say, emails do cause negativity. Social media can cause negativity. Watching bad films, I've explained to you, I have to watch what I watch, because if I watch something that triggers me, that sends me mentally into a spiral and can send me into a mood, bring up a memory and a flip. So it all comes down to the individual, not just to be in control of how much they're consuming and what they allow it to do. But I think more so then if you relate that over to what we're talking about now in terms of observation of thought processes, but more so now with yourself on breathing, awareness of breathing. And if someone could be as aware of the breath and the techniques that you coach and what you are talking about in terms of health, respiratory health and breath, that is going to benefit the body on a day-to-day basis to be a healthier human, it's helping people understand you're in control of that as well, just as much as you're in control of picking up the phone, sending a text, writing a comment, clicking a like, scrolling. That's control. But also understanding your breath, learning about the breath and implementing it is key, because you know me as a coach, Kev, and you know how strong I am at standing out and saying, right, you've just been for a session with Kev or with whoever it may be, or me, and you've done something pretty powerful, and you turned around to us. And I know a lot of people turned around to you and said, "Fuck, Kev, that was amazing. You've just, I can't believe how powerful that was." And I'm like, well, when you go away from him or when you go away from a coach, what are you going to do? Are you going to do that again? Yeah. Oh, fucking yeah, 100%. Okay. And then a month goes by, and I can guarantee that person's not touched the breath they've done. They've not thought, I might research a bit more into it and learn about it. They've sank back into their life. And they came to you or they came to a coach for a reason. And the reason was because something wasn't right about their life. Something wasn't sitting right with them. They were struggling with an issue. So they came to seek. They saw it and they found it, but then they went away and life encapsulated them again. So I think, sorry to ramble, you know how passionate I am about that, but I think
you're right.
In terms of awareness of breath from the workshop, because I want to bring it back in, because I do want to kind of talk a lot about in terms of what you're kind of driving into in terms of the breath, because even I'm excited. I think Kev's got some things lined up. He's been texting me that he wants me to go and experience with him, and I'm fucking excited about that. I'm not sure we're going to talk about it tonight, but I'm hugely excited about it. Are these things, like you say, that people can go away and do on a day-to-day basis, basically, aren't these? Like, you're trying to coach people things that are going to transition their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's about going away and really thinking. Having time afterwards to process what it is that you've just done. Having time afterwards to process what you've just been through. Just the same as working out or doing exercise. Thinking about every exercise that you did. Thinking about the form of that exercise. How many reps you did. You know, can you improve that? Can you do that a little bit more next time? So it's exactly the same as that. So you go away, you hold your breath, you do the exercises, you do the things that I'm telling you to do, and the next time that I see you, things should have improved if you do them in a certain way, and you carry out these exercises daily. Your chemoreceptors in your body will become more flexible, and you'll start to breathe less. You'll have less drive to breathe. You'll sleep better. You'll snore less, and you'll generally reach homeostasis better than you potentially were doing before. Um, and you know, like you said, we mentioned before, you're breathing more than you're doing anything else.
Yeah.
So if you've got the power to influence the thing that you do the most as a human, how is that going to change your physiology, and how's it going to change your mindset? Because your breath is everything. Because again, things we mentioned in the past, you can last for weeks without food, days without water, but only minutes without air, without oxygen in the body. So the body needs oxygen. In every cell of the body needs oxygen, every cell, and that's a lot of oxygen. And if you're not getting it, if you're not breathing properly, if you're breathing too fast, you're not getting enough oxygen in the body. So these workshops are going to be sort of designed around specific things. So there's going to be workshops about hormones and menopause, perimenopause. That's big in the world at the moment. And there's definitely not enough work being done with menopause. There's not enough drug testing on using women instead of men, and using women to test drugs at different stages of the menstrual cycle throughout the month, because the drugs have different effects during different phases of your period, believe it or not, because your biochemistry is different every phase that you go through during your monthly. So science and medical science is way behind, because we're good at testing on lobsters and monkeys and things like that, and then we test a lot more on men than we do. And if all the men come forward, and we do a lot of drug testing on men, and then we give them to women. So that needs altering as well, certainly when it comes to breath and stuff. But I'll be doing workshops with asthma as well. So parent and child asthma courses, parent and child asthma workshops. And I'm going to be getting people to do, really simple things, blowing up balloons, and I bought, you said bring some props, but I brought some balloons. And you will be surprised how many times I hear people say, I used to be able to blow up balloons, but you know what? I can't blow them up anymore.
Wow.
And you've never thought, obviously, you wouldn't think that was an issue. I just can't blow them up anymore. Oh, I see, because your lungs have got smaller, obviously, than they were 20 years ago. No, they haven't, but something's changed. Maybe it's the way that you're using your diaphragm. Maybe the reason that you can't blow this up now is because your diaphragm as a muscle has become weak, because you're constantly breathing into dead space here for 10, 15, 20 years.
That really blew me away when you talked about dead space the other day, Kev. So just before you go back into the balloon, because Liam's dropped up, can you blow up a balloon? So we'll have to kind of drop back into that one. But just in terms of dead space, that was a really interesting aspect that you told me about the other day.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's you'll have to tell me. You put me on the spot now. Go on, Ben.
Yes, good. Right. So basically, dead space. Every time you take a breath, you're breathing 30,000 times a day on average. It's a lot of air. And if you're breathing shallow, so if you're only breathing here, now this can be because of loads of reasons. Autonomic dysfunction. You could have problems with your lungs. It could be predisposition. It could be trauma or PTSD. Whatever. But if you're over breathing, hormones maybe. During the luteal phase, women out there, during the luteal phase of your period, you're producing progesterone, lots more of it. It can double your respiratory rate in that phase, luteal phase, that 10 to 14-day phase before you come on your period. Every woman needs to know that, so that she can change her breathing for that 10 to 14 days. and it will make the symptoms of PMT less. So that's just one thing. So if you're breathing into dead space and you're breathing in sort of, so what if you, every time you take a breath, you're supposed to be breathing into the lower air sacs of the lungs. You're supposed to be breathing diaphragmatically. You're supposed to get a full lung of breath. Per breath, you're supposed to breathe deeply and slowly. But if you're breathing shallow, you're not really reaching the alveoli activation, which is where most of the gas exchange takes place. So if you're constantly breathing just into your trachea and your bronchioles passages, and you're not reaching alveoli, you're not getting any oxygen. You're constantly breathing into what they refer as this dead space, which is about 150 milliliters of breath per breath that you're not getting any oxygen gas exchange with. So you're breathing in and out stale air.
Wow.
So you're losing oxygen in the body, huge amounts of it, maybe 15, 18% per breath. So 30,000 times a day, you're losing maybe 15 to 18% of that. So you take that off, that's a lot of breathing that you've done for nothing.
Yeah.
Where you've not been getting oxygen. And your breathing is to get oxygen in the body, vast amounts of it. And the fact that bodies that are low in oxygen, they have certain ailments and illnesses, things like irritable bowel syndrome, which is rife at the moment, allergies, hay fever, asthma, diabetes. Even some cancers are connected to bodies that are low in oxygen. That's why Christie's still send people for oxygen therapy, because they know that cancer doesn't survive very well in oxygen-rich environments. So why aren't they telling us to breathe in such a way that we're getting much more oxygen, which is through the nose? Open your mouth, look in the mirror. Yeah. Just tell me anything that you see in your mouth that's to do with your respiratory system. Teeth, your tongue, your taste buds, saliva, the movement of the tongue to push food down the throat. There's nothing to do with breathing. So why do we keep breathing through it? The nose is the organ for breathing.
And in terms of like where you were talking about in terms of dead space, are we eradicating that? So you're always going to have that, but what you're talking about there is if we can take a deeper breath through the nose, it's getting past the space of where the dead space would be, that section, and then you're getting into the area that is going to benefit the body more and oxygenate the blood, get into the lungs and oxygenate the blood more. Is that where you're coming from with that one?
Absolutely, yeah. And if the people watching, if the viewers want to try it, all you have to do is just sit there and and then I want you to do the same thing, same amount of air, but breathing through your nose. You get much more air, and you naturally breathe diaphragmatically when you breathe through the nose.
It's funny you say that, because when breathing, and I know how to breathe into my stomach as well, so I wasn't consciously trying to do it then. But when I breathed in from my mouth, it was definitely my chest that was rising in. But as soon as I went through my nose, I even felt my lower back pressurize a bit. It's like it's stomach and lower back, whereas through the mouth, like I say, you can even see my chest there.
Sure. So there is a difference. If you nasal breathe, if you remember the words LSD, long, slow, deep breaths. Okay, our breathing, we shouldn't be able to hear ourselves breathing at rest. It should be silent. We shouldn't be big breathers. The more we slow it down.
So I think that's a key one for people, anyone listening, to obviously take away. In terms of the balloon, because I know that I don't want to sting Liam now because he brought it up on screen, and I think
oh, nice, yeah.
Just move on from that one, Liam. I'm joking. What was the what in terms of bringing that in? Because I know you've got a few things that you've mentioned to me, but I fully appreciate you want to save some for the workshops. But I appreciate you bringing the prop with the balloon. And it is really interesting, like you say, the ability to blow up a balloon. Like, where's the philosophy now behind this? What is the philosophy behind the balloon in terms of understanding where your breath is at, or is it also, or instead, to enable you to improve your kind of breath is it breath stroke? Is it breath intake?
Your minute ventilation. So they refer to it as
Right.
minute ventilation. That's what they talk about, and it's the amount of air that you're breathing. So it's not just the fact that you're changing your biomechanics. So you're changing how you breathe. Okay, and again that depends on your clothing as well. If you wear tight clothing, you're going to restrict the diaphragm. You're going to restrict the natural movement of the body, the rib cage to come out, which is helping the lungs to expand. So all this natural movement, your diaphragm has to drop down. Your diaphragm and your pelvic floor, they're all sort of connected. It's like a big siphon. So the diaphragm has to move for a full range of motion. But if you're breathing up a chest for 10 years, your diaphragm just gets a bit weak. It's just not dropping quite as fast. So as a muscle, which the diaphragm is, it becomes weak.
Right.
So you may tend to find that you've got no force. So when you go to blow the balloon up, you've got no force, you've got no pressure to blow up the balloon. And that all, obviously, you have to have lung capacity, but you also have to have a good, strong diaphragm to push against that to blow the balloon up. So, people, there's a lady in today who she couldn't blow it up. So I said, well, tighten your core and then tighten everything up, tighten your diaphragm up, and then push all the way up and then blow the balloon up. And first time, she blew it up. So it's just getting people to identify their physiology when it comes to breathing. That's what it is. This is why I use things like these drinking straws here. So this is a very narrow passage where your airway is about just shy of an inch in diameter. Okay, so this is much smaller than that. It's probably I would say about an eighth of that. Okay, so this would be quite difficult to breathe through if you had something like panic disorder or anxiety. Because if you've got panic disorder and anxiety, or you're over breathing, or you're breathing into dysfunction a lot, your body's going to be quite sensitive to CO2 levels. So the minute you start breathing through this straw, you're going to increase CO2 levels, and then you're going to get a panic, a drive to breathe. So sometimes people want to get people to breathe through straws like this. They'll put it on, they'll start breathing, and they'll, I'm not getting enough air. You're getting loads of air. Everybody should be able to pick up a straw this length here. Okay, at first, if they're struggling breathing through a full straw, I'll cut it in half. If they can manage quite easily to breathe through it in half, I'll probably, I'll cut it into thirds and let them do it then. That's too easy. I'll cut another straw in half, let them do it with half. Right, that's just finding where your balance is. But the more you do things like this each day, just to build up CO2 levels in the body slowly, it changes the flexibility of your chemoreceptors. So again, it's getting people to think about the airway, about the size of it, about how air is going in the body. Why is it going in the body? What's going on when oxygen is attaching to hemoglobin in your blood? Where's it going? What's it doing? This is very simple physiology, and everybody should know it then, so that when they're breathing, sometimes they think, wow, that's that happening. I've got lactic acid buildup. That's because I've been over breathing or I've been hyperventilating. I'm lightheaded because I've been hyperventilating. And it's understanding our physiology. In the East, they know exactly what's going on because they're very preventative in the way that they look after their human beings. In the West, we just destroy and break everything and then fix it with tablets and pharmaceuticals.
Well, I think as you were talking then, Kev, what, and again, it's definitely a theme whenever we speak. It's that all of these words kind of come into place. So kind of like I'm going to talk now about the breath, because these exercises you were given, and then I'm going to talk about thoughts, I'm going to talk about emotions, and I'm going to talk about observation and awareness.
Sure.
And I think the reason I'm going to shout all of these things out is because Kev's now talked through a fairly simple exercise, obviously when Kev explains it, but with major benefits. And obviously when you understand how to do it through what Kev's just coached there and what Kev would coach you, say for example, you start to, and I can imagine, again, I've utilized altitude mass with yourself, Kevin. I strive to put myself in some situations where I do create quite stressful states, so I'm more composed in life. That's something that I strive to do, and I think it's in a safe environment something that everyone should do. And this is kind of where this conversation is going to lead to now, because if you have someone that does struggle with kind of issues of, I know you've kind of talked about like everyone with anxiety, but stress and worry and panic and all of these things. And when all of them things happen, it gets exaggerated. And then those exaggerations turn into kind of overthinking and catastrophizing thoughts. And that turns into more negative emotions. And then that turns into an emotional reaction. And this is how most lives fucking live out. But by doing the exercise you're talking about there, it kind of helps every single aspect of that. And what I mean is, you're helping someone to focus on the breath, which is having major benefits to their biology in the body. Okay. But by getting them to do that, they are going to potentially experience at the very start, even someone who is fairly relaxed and confident potentially will still start to feel a little bit of worry or uncertainty on the straw. They're still going to notice that. So you're telling them to embrace it, observe it, and not just observe potentially how they're feeling, but then what the sensation. We've talked about this before, Kev, the sensations you are feeling potentially in the body, over the emotion, over the thought, the sensations. And then as they can become more relaxed with it, and this is where knowledge is so empowering, Kev, I think, because when you have the knowledge around it, so if they listen to you and they take in what you're saying, then they're able to do this exercise and think, I understand what Kev's saying now. Yeah, Kev, I can feel this happening. I see this happening. So suddenly they're in a positive state because they're in control of everything, and everything that's happening they're thinking about. So all of this other shit that's going on in their life that was there a minute ago suddenly evaporates because they've become present in the moment. They become observant of what they're doing, and what they're doing is beneficial to their body, and they're in control of their body. And it just, this is the control we're talking about, rather than, like you said there, instead of sitting down and thinking, well, this is a bit daft, I'm not going to do that. I'd rather go and drop a couple of diazepam or a couple of XYZ, or I'd rather go and get this because that's going to calm me down. And it's like, well, yeah, it's going to calm you down for the minute, potentially going to do your body damage and your brain damage. And then as soon as it wears off, you're either going to want another, or you're going to go back to thinking like this. And do you know what I'm saying? Like, these are natural remedies that you can do on a day-to-day basis that have sustainable, and not just sustainable, but progressive impacts on the body and mind.
Sure.
So my point being with that, Kev, is like you said there with the straw example. If you get someone who is starting on a third of a straw, the progression potentially goes to a half, to potentially a foot. Just they are getting better at it. Their body is adapting. This is true progression of self.
Sure.
In every area. Did that make sense? I was just trying to piece it as you were talking, but
no, massive sense. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so difficult to put into words. And I commented on a post that you put on Instagram tonight, and you seem to manage to be able to put these things into words quite easy, but it's so difficult to get people to understand it. But in terms of building resilience, is breathing in and out of a straw creating resilience? Yes, it is, because it's putting you under stress. So it's not a stressor exercise like taking yourself into cold water or heavy breathing or training in the gym, but it's making things difficult on the body where normally it finds it easy. So what does the body do with that? It causes repair, adaptation. It evolves to breathe through a smaller hole. So when people breathe through this straw for 2 minutes, they go, oh my God, they can take these massive, big, deep breaths in. That is the adaptation. So all of a sudden you feel as though you can breathe deeper because you've been breathing through a narrow straw. So it's just about putting the body under duress. And we know now that the slower you breathe, the less air you breathe, the longer you're going to survive, the longer you're going to live biochemically and mentally. You're going to be more cognitive. And they sell these on necklaces now, the little steel tubes, and they call them anxiety necklaces.
Wow.
So they're about this long, so they're not too long, obviously. So they're about this long, about a third of this straw. And then you can have your name engraved on it. They're pretty little things, little silver things go around your neck. A friend, Sarah's got one, I think it was it, Flourish. So you bring one up, you put it in your mouth, when you're having a panic attack, when you're hyperventilating or you're feeling anxious, you breathe through it. And then what does it do when you breathe through it? You start to build up carbon dioxide. When you build up carbon dioxide, oxygen starts to attach to hemoglobin in your blood. Hemoglobin then is delivered around the body and to the brain. And because of the presence of that CO2 that you're building up by narrowing the passageway, oxygen release to the brain and to the cells in the body. So it's the same, doing the same thing as a brown paper bag. Panic attack, you put the brown paper bag on, you breathe in your own CO2. It affects the Bohr effect. So you have a shift of the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Oxygen attaches hemoglobin, it's delivered readily around the body because the body needs carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the prime stimulus to breathe in all mammals. And it's CO2 that's the white elephant in the room. They're missing it. And they're not understanding the Bohr effect. And that's the most important thing. And that's all I'm teaching here. And it's dead simple, really. It's just chemistry. Oxygen, hemoglobin, and CO2, they have to have this handshake in the body. They have to associate with one another. If you're over breathing, you're getting rid of too much carbon dioxide, the handshake doesn't take place. They miss one another. So you affect your biochemistry. Do you understand what I mean?
100%.
So if you underbreathe, you'll build CO2 up. Well, people will say, well, you don't want to build too much CO2 up because you'll make your body this, you'll make your body that, you'll make your body acidic. Yeah, you don't want to build too much CO2 up, but you do want to do it. You don't want to always do it, but you want to do it. And then in the middle, you find this balance, homeostasis, so that your blood is constantly at this beautiful 7.35 to 7.45 in the pH scale, which is where it should be. Not too alkaline, not too acidic. But to do that, your body needs to be away from chemicals, and it needs to, in terms of its own chemistry set and elements, it needs to be able to balance its own. There's so much dysfunction happening to humans because we're not breathing properly.
I think there's something that nice drop of elements there as well. I like that, Kev. But there's because it just from the voice note you sent me earlier today, which we need to delve into at another time.
Yeah.
But I think that I listened to this. It's not the one I sent you, but it was another clip from David Goggins, and it was really powerful. And he talked about the word balance, and I couldn't agree more with him. I've got a few kind of different perspectives on balance, but this one in particular, which was like to find the balance most people are talking about, which is kind of like this balance to be able to sustain and live by, but to have achieved the goal and to have the goal within that balance, there has to be a point where that goal outweighs everything because you need to get there. And if you take that to a smaller perspective, that's kind of where you're coming from, which is to gain a better balance in life, you need to at certain points put your body under duress, under stress. You have to take time out to put effort into doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So then on a longer term basis, again, like you say, be in better homeostasis, be in a better body state, in a better breath state, in a better mental state. And I think that I know we've talked to you a lot about this, Kev, and I know you're going to be delivering the workshops, but I think that I had a lot of comments tonight, and I think some of them obviously have definitely done sessions with you before, and these guys have taken stuff away from you because they've put in the comments, I think a few of them are actually talking about some of the techniques you wear with them, especially kind of nasal breathing and running and things like that. And you know, I've been on at you for a while, Kev, about kind of delivering more of this information out there. So obviously you've got your workshops kind of going on. Do you think there'll be stuff that's coming on top of that with the knowledge you've got on breath in terms of practices and exercises people are going to be able to do? Because I think one thing, and this isn't me saying this because it's you, Kev, this I would say this generally because I believe in what you say. I think you make the science that, and this, the reason I'm saying this is because when I started to read the books that I read, they were so far above my vocabulary level and my knowledge level, it was untrue. I was literally reading a scientific book with terms and words I'd never heard of before, but I was that stubborn because of what had gone on in my life that I was just determined to stick reading it. And I read it and read and read and read and read. And through that determination and persistence, I've started to understand words and understand the terms and understand this scientific research and understand these methods. And
Sure.
what I was able to do then was I was able to talk to people that potentially were where I was before that and explain it to them and they could understand it. Not because I was repeating it in the way I read it in the book, but I was kind of repeating it how I understood it. And that was relatable. Does that make sense?
Massively,
And
yeah, sure.
that I just feel you have that gift so much more than myself. And I think that all of this scientific research that you're talking about, you are breaking it down in ways that people can understand it, but make it applicable in life. And the reason I'm so big in trying to push you on that is because I'm such an advocate of putting things into your life that make a positive effect.
Sure.
And there's so many things out there that lead people astray. And I think that some people just feel a bit lost sometimes, but you feel fine, you feel found when you can start to do stuff that does good for your body. So I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
a
Yeah.
lot what you talked about tonight, away from the workshops, if you could ever deliver stuff like that, I think would be powerful, Kev. I'm just dropping that one on you, mate. Not for an
Yeah,
answer.
sure. Yeah, and I'm gonna quote James Moon here tonight. And thanks for the comments and stuff, and the fact that people are still doing it. And Emily just said that she's running uphill and she's breathing in through her nose and out through her mouth. And the more you do it, it's like anything else. You get better at it. And this is what free divers do. We're supposed, and me and you are going to go and do some free dive training, aren't we? So we're looking
Yeah,
forward to that.
buzzing for that. Can't wait for that.
The guy will answer me back. He's not answered me back yet, but um, free divers constantly hold their breath all day long, on and off, and they're doing CO2 cycles, and um, they're basically extending the flexibility of the chemoreceptors in the body. Chemoreceptors are watching your breathing. The chemoreceptors are in the carotid artery. They're in the aortic arch of your heart, your aorta, your central chemoreceptors. Then you have peripheral chemoreceptors as well in the body. And these chemoreceptors are blood monitors. So they're monitoring carbon dioxide and oxygen in your body constantly. And they're sending messages to the brain, to the locus coeruleus in the brain, to tell the diaphragm to drop, to get more air in, more oxygen. And it's increasing breath rate. And then it will communicate with the baroreceptors, which then dilate your blood vessels and your arteries to increase blood pressure and more oxygen and a bit more glucose. And then they're sending messages for stuff all over the body to try and find this homeostasis for you all the time, sending messages to your kidneys, your buffering capacity of your kidneys, trying to keep your blood level. So this is constantly going on in the background. And the way that you breathe directly affects it. What you put in your body directly affects it. The first two things you do when you're born is you breathe and you eat within minutes of one another, or maybe 5-10 minutes, maybe a bit longer. But you're breathing straight away, and then you latch on and you breathe and you eat. So wouldn't you say that those two things were probably quite important for human beings? Let's go all the way back. Let's not go back to when you were abused as a child. Let's not go back to when something bad happened to you. Let's go back to when you were born. Let's go back to when you were breathing for the first time. How's your breathing going on at the moment? Where are you? How are you sleeping? How much air are you taking in the body? Are you breathing too fast? Do you feel safe? Do you feel vulnerable? Do you feel more vulnerable than you did do before? These are the sort of questions that doctors need to be asking before they're so quick to give people antidepressants and kids Ritalin. Ask them how they're bloody sleeping. Ask them how they're breathing. They come into surgeries with their gobs wide open, children, puffing and panting, and they can't sleep at night. And I mentioned before, 80% in a recent study in America of kids with ADHD are mouth breathers. 80%.
That's
It's too
phenomenal.
high now. It's ridiculous.
It
There
is.
is a direct connection between the breath, over breathing, autonomic dysfunction, you know, being frightened in your environment, and ADHD and mouth breathing and snoring at night.
Yeah.
It's off the scale, and things need to change. But I'm just going to say, and James Moon mentioned this, and he mentioned post-traumatic growth, so PTSD,
Okay.
not PTSD, and that's what it is. It's not post-traumatic stress disorder. It's post-traumatic growth as opposed to post-traumatic stress. I think that's what you said it was, and that's what it is really, because we're using that post-traumatic stress for growth.
Ah, right. I see what you're saying now. Yeah.
Just I mean, I've probably not
Yeah.
explained it as well as he did.
No, you're talking. Sorry, yeah. So you're talking about all these principles and techniques that you are talking about now would create a form of post-traumatic growth because you're
Growth.
putting stress onto the body, but a stress that's positively impacting it afterwards because of the state you're in, because of the knowledge you've got around it, because of the situation and circumstances, rather than it being something that after it, you've got no real clue why it fucking happened, why you were doing it. And that's probably where the majority of the trauma comes from.
Yeah, so help people with PTSD to help them to try and convert that to post-traumatic growth,
Ah, right, okay.
rather than it being a disorder, rather than it being an issue. Give them the tools, the mindset, the tools, the breath, the control over the body to convert that, and the knowledge to observe their thoughts and be present, rather than keep on allowing these thoughts to send us into physical overdrive
Yeah.
by triggering us. So send us into physical overdrive. And the more you learn about this, the better. The more people I speak to every day, Ben. I say this to you. I've said this to you in the past. I learn far more from people than they learn from me,
Yeah.
because every time they tell me about the past, and every time they tell me a little snippet about how they get overcome it, and the things that they think constantly, it just
But in,
underpins what I
in,
do. It
but in
really
my
does.
opinion, that's what makes a good coach in any field. In any field, a good coach is someone that learns from the people that they're coaching, because
Mm.
the body and the person has been through different things. They react in different ways. So you are looking, like you say, that it's not the method you are trying to use, that you are looking at transitioning more so than the person that's come to you, what they've been through and how it's affecting them. So then you as a coach, and this is something you've always talked to me about, you've been so inclined to look at people and notice things, and you've done it with me so many times where we've been out and about, or we've been at a retreat, or been somewhere, and the awareness you have of what happens in people's mannerisms, bodies, gesture, all these things you are so inclined to notice. And again, that's what you just habitually do because of your coaching mannerisms, in terms of of just how you coach, because of how important it is as well. That's something you've got to look for. You were talking to me the other day about when you would do, I hope I'm okay saying this, like I'm not talking about a specific person, by the way, when I'm talking about this, but Kev was telling me that when he does his kind of transformative breath work, that he has to really look at them. He has to zone in. He has to see every movement and see how they're breathing and where they're breathing, and what their eyelids or their eyes may be doing. And all of these things, you have to be so present and unaware. It's not like you're just letting them breathe and then looking out the window or walking about and listening to the music. Like, you are looking for key triggers that are happening and potential shifts in the music that transitions to the breath or the different body positions. And just pretty phenomenal, Kev, the amount that goes into this. And I think that, again, is another thing that stands out as a coach. It's when the coach puts that much emphasis into passion of what they do. And are so in tuned and present in a session because of passion for what they do. Well, you get a lot of coaches in a lot of fields that don't have passion. Their thoughts are somewhere else, their mind's somewhere else, and that's sad. when you see someone that's passionate about what they do, it truly comes out, mate.
No, but it's just, and it's the same for your job. You know, when you get somebody sending you messages saying that, you know, that they've done this, they've achieved this, they've lost weight, they've done this, they've gained muscle, they've gone fitter, they sleep better. You can't buy it then, can you? And
No.
you know, all the money in the world, you know, and I've said this before, if I won the lottery tonight, I'd still be there in the morning, because I know I just want people to breathe better, because I know it changes how you feel, because it changes how I feel. And it's helped me so much in the past, and recently especially, I've needed to to hone in on the breath more than ever. I've needed to focus on exactly what breath is doing, because it was doing it to me.
Yeah.
And because of what I went through in April, it was doing it to me on a daily basis. And I was coaching people, and I've been coaching people for 2 years now, mainly over the last 18 months, certainly more people with anxiety and panic disorder and claustrophobia, abuse, and I'm coaching them, and I'm saying, you know, slow your breathing down. And I was getting into that same situation of having to coach myself in those moments. It was so hard to acknowledge my own mind, and I knew it was trying to protect me, but it was so hard to observe it without acting to it, because of just what an awful thing I'd been through.
Yeah.
And I know it's easier said than done now.
Yeah.
And I'm telling certain people sometimes, you know, do this, do this, do that. And I know it's not easy. I know it's not. I know it's not, because I've done it and I've lived it. And, you know, but the more you talk about it, the more you learn about it, the more you put your faith into it, the more it works.
Yeah.
It does. But time is a great healer. So I would say to anybody that has PTSD and trauma from a long time ago, it's definitely time to let go.
Yeah.
Definitely. You know,
I think he's spoken really powerful there, mate, and I think we've had some powerful comments coming in. So thank you for everyone that's dropped a comment. And just to kind of just to touch now, Kev, on, I think anyone listening to this has heard obviously the power of Kev's knowledge. I don't want to shout anything out, Kev, in terms of what you do, but I would like you to kind of just express. So at this minute in time, you've got the workshops coming out. Are you still doing one-to-one sessions down at your land? Aren't you still doing one-to-one breath sessions, and you can book in through, obviously you've got Instagram at Breathevolution and the website.
yeah.
In
So yeah,
terms of, God, sorry.
yeah. So I'm always going to do one-to-one sessions, Ben.
Yeah,
Always, because some people just can't be in a group,
yeah.
and some people are just not comfortable or safe enough in a group. Some
I
people
feel
don't.
that
Some people don't feel safe doing a one-to-one. You know,
I,
but
I when we went to, sorry to butt in, mate, but I always hold my hands up there, and I think this drops back into what you talked about a minute ago. Like I'm a coach, but I still, like, I struggle in group environments. And when we went to that retreat, I was quite open and honest. That environment made me very unsettled. So if I was to come to you, although I would come to a group session, I would benefit more from a one-to-one. I think I'd let go more. I think I'd feel more relaxed. And I think for potentially what I'd want out of the breath session with you, I would get more out of it from that. But like you say, there were other people who would need to. So the fact that you're offering both, I think, has a major benefit.
yeah, for sure. And some of the best feedback I've ever had whilst doing this, and some of the most positive, life changing. In fact, people that have been suicidal have messaged me and said, you know, that 2 hours has saved my bloody life. You know, and um, you know, that is the most important thing, Ben. You know,
Yeah.
excuse me for getting a bit emotional, but
No, mate.
the thing is that it's difficult to do, you know, to sort of keep focusing on one-to-ones all the time, because they take a lot of your time. You know, I don't earn a lot of money doing this, but the more and more I think about it, and the more and more people say, Kev, you need to up this, you need to up your prices, you need to charge more money for what you do. It's not just a breath and cold water session. It isn't that. Some people they turn up to me, Ben, they don't even get in the cold. They don't get to that point. They don't even get to do any breath work.
Yeah.
They just turn up to talk.
Yeah.
And they're happy to just, pay the money and just talk because they just need to.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing in my work.
Yeah.
Is that, and the group sessions are great. They're fun for the people who are safe in those environments and feel happy to talk and do things in front of others and breathe in front of others. Some people find it petrifying, but they're all right. Sometimes I have to move myself about. If I'm sat at the side of somebody, I can see that they're uncomfortable. And as soon as I sit behind them, they can breathe again. They're all right. So you have to move yourself around people. You have to adjust yourself to how people feel. And I've started to sort of learn so much from people. I know this is going off again a bit, but I move seats around in the dome now, and I let people choose. I said, I want you to just sit wherever you feel comfortable. Yeah. And it kind of tells me how anxious they are if they're sitting near the exit. So and that's kind of giving things away a little bit now. But people choose exits when they're struggling with their breathing as well, believe it or not. And those people tend to sleep with doors and windows open. And so it's being observant of others. And I think, the Buddha said this, adjusting yourself to make others feel comfortable is a gift. And it's a gift to you to be able to do it. And that's what I try and do more and more each day is to be as humble as I can, Ben, and to just try and adjust myself for others.
Yeah.
And I feel that's where I feel most happiest and most content. I don't want money, don't want loads of money. I don't. Even if I had it, I wouldn't really know what to do with the bloody stuff anyway. Apart from I'd buy myself, I'd probably
take me out for some dinner.
What's that?
Take me out for some dinner.
I'll take you out for some dinner, love. Yeah, yeah, for sure, mate. I'll get a meal deal at Co-op if you want.
As long as it's not KFC, mate.
KFC.
To be fair, Kev, like for anyone listening now, and again, this is going to be stripped to an audio as well, so it'll be uploaded to listen to as a podcast. So there's going to be multiple ways to listen to this. And I think the comments that the only reason I'm saying that is because if you're listening to this on a podcast, you won't have seen the comments that were coming up then. But the comments that were coming up kind of backed up a lot of the genuineness that Kev was speaking from the heart there. These are people that have know Kev through his coaching, have become friends and have gone back to him for more coaching, have actually implemented it into their lives and it's transitioned their lives. And this is the what Kev was saying there. He's Kev through and through. It's why I've got such a bond with this man, not just through his knowledge, but for the want to literally help people. And one thing I'm going to say, and then Kev will wrap it up. And it's just one thing you said to me, that when someone comes, and it might have been for the cold water, and they don't even get into the water, they don't even get into the breath, they just came to talk. But it wasn't just that they didn't come to talk, Kev. It's because they would have got so much from the conversation. And that is an empowering thing from your perspective. Like, what you find when you speak to yourself sometimes is that, even I've noticed this in conversations where you've had with other people and even with myself, that you might someone feels comfortable straight away around you, so they feel they can start to tell you things. Then you start to embed that into your mind and talk back to them. So you've not just given them the opportunity to talk, you will have given them coaching. You would have really helped them dissect. That would have been enough. That's why they haven't gone into the breath, because it can be a lot to take in. That's the point with all of this. Some people that are coming, and this is one thing that I will shout out before we end it, and I hope Kev doesn't mind me saying this, because there's a lot of people who see cold water and breath work at the minute and are seeing it and not truly understanding it, or just wanting to do it. And I'm not saying that they're not going into it because they have issues. I think they may have issues, trauma, real bad things going on, and they hear the hype, they see the hype, and they think, fuck, this is going to save me, this is going to be the one, this is going to do it. And then they go down. But you've got to be willing to understand it. You've got to be willing to go with it. You've got to be willing to go through the process. There is a process that goes with this. You've got to release. You've got to let go. You've got to listen. and be willing to. Like, I've witnessed sometimes Kev's done breath at some of the sessions, and he's asked someone how they feel after, and they've said like nothing, and they've only said nothing because they've not been prepared to let go and really sink into what Kev's asking them to do. And I've seen that 15 years ago. That would have been me. That would have been me sat there and not being resistant to letting anything out. But the point to this is like that it's so powerful, but you've got to go into this with the willingness to let it happen. And I think we've talked about expectancy before, Kev. And I think sometimes people can come with too higher expectancy because they've heard something else or X, Y, Z, or they want it so much, and you've just sometimes got to let it flow. You've got to let it go. And I just wanted to get that across. I don't know why that came out then, mate.
No, yeah, you're right, mate. Expectations, it's damaging expectations, to us, and we spoke about that in the past, haven't we, on Instagram lives and stuff. But the people that say, did you feel anything? They said no. It is my absolute duty to make sure that the next time that they do it, they feel it.
Yeah.
And I want more of those. I want more of the people that tell me that they can't. The people that can feel it are going to manage this. They're going to connect to their bodies. They're going to feel the breath. They're going to go from form to form using the breath. They're going to do that. They're going to make that transition. They're going to connect their minds to the body. The ones that don't feel it, those are the ones who need the work. Those are the ones who need the coaching the most to feel the bodies. And I remember saying this just quickly before you wrap it up, but some people can't even feel their own hearts beating in their body.
Yeah.
If I stop now, I can feel mine. Okay. Can anybody watching sit, be quiet, close your eyes and feel yours? If you can't, you have to ask yourself why. Because you should be able to feel your own heart beating in your body. Because you should be able to feel alive. So sometimes stress and being disconnected can make you feel that way. You can't feel your own body because you're just so removed. And that's sad. And there's quite a lot of people who feel like that. So this is the type of people that I'm working with all the time, but I find it's an honor and a privilege, Ben, to work with these people and for people to tell me that things that they're not even telling their own families, they're not even telling their own husbands and partners and wives and sons and daughters, but they confide in me. I am overwhelmed with gratitude, Ben, and the people listening. That people put that trust into me, that allow me to create that safe space. It's a beautiful thing, and I'm honoured.
That's why Breevolution is where it is, mate, and that's why it's going to continue to impact and transition away of the world, and it's I truly believe that, and I think that I've said this a couple of times to you, but I'm really excited to see the next steps. I'm excited to be involved in the next steps, like Kev talks about there. He's got some things lined up, and as always, he asked me, and I'm right there with him to do these things, because I think, again, my mindset is to progress myself as much as I can, mind and body. And everything that I've learned since knowing Kev on the breath is massively impacted that, but it doesn't stop. It doesn't mean we settle. It doesn't mean I get complacent with it. It's what more can I learn, and what more can I develop, and what more can I do. And I think the one thing that you will find with Kev and myself is we live and breathe this. And that was a lot of the points of the post that I put out, that we're honest in stuff that still happens in our lives, but we're also honest in the fact that we are coaches that literally live and breathe what we do. We love it. We research it. We trial it. We test it. We research more. We find new stuff. We find old stuff. We find people. We work with people. Again, I think you'll be able to hear from it tonight, the passion that comes out. But Kev, I'm going to wrap it up there, mate, because we just hit over 90 minutes, mate. And
yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much.
No, mate. Again, it's been a privilege to have you on. It truly has, as always, Kev. I think the problem with me and you is we could probably be here till 4 a.m, and Liam will be cursing me because he's working away
Yeah.
as well. He's in the background like, fuck you.
We need to start on quantum mechanics now, quantum physics. And then
Yeah. We'll pull out the book, we'll start some quotes. But no, guys, I'm going to drop Kev backstage, but just before we do, obviously, like I say, please keep an eye out on his social channel for his workshops coming up. Like he said there, he's still doing one-to-one sessions. The land that Kev has got, I'm not even just saying that it's phenomenal. He's when you walk in, the aura, the space is just absolutely beautiful. What he's done for it is phenomenal. It's such a tranquil and blessed place to go. And yeah, just give him a follow if you don't already on social. Get in touch with him. Definitely recommend getting him for a session. Take on board what he talked about tonight. And guys, I am pressing him massively to kind of get more of his own methods and ways out there. So I'm going to keep at it. So keep your eyes on Kev, because he's got big things coming for we're halfway through 2022. So there's going to be a lot more coming from this man. I guarantee it. Kev, thanks so much for coming on the show, mate. And I'll speak to you soon.
all right. Thanks so much. Hold your breath, folks.
Big love, Kev. Thank you, mate.
Big love, mate. Thank you.
Yes, guys. So that wraps up episode 7 with the main man, Kev from Brevolution. As always, we do love to chat. So apologies that has gone on. This is going to be an audio as well for podcasts. Guys, if you have watched on YouTube, if you can click the subscribe button or the like button, if you've enjoyed what you've listened to tonight, clicking like would be amazing after. And also, if you are on social, on Instagram, if you can tag or even put in your story how you found it tonight, if you can talk about it, if you can big up, especially Kev himself. I think it was a big one for me to have Kev on tonight. He means a hell of a lot to me, that guy. And it's a privilege to not know him as a friend, but also to be moving with him. I think last thing I'm going to kind of leave you guys with is this. I think that I transitioned my life, and to do that, I had to step away from a lot of. I put a lot of posts out about this. I stepped away from a lot of people in a lot of environments, and it was my choice to do that, and I needed to do that for myself. For no one else is not judging what they were doing. I needed to do it for me to be a better person. But it's hard to do that because you become isolated, and suddenly you find yourself potentially with not a lot of friends and not a lot of people around. So the one thing that I want to leave you guys with is that if you ever feel like that, if you are brave enough to make that step, there are people out there that will align with you. Because I was lucky enough to come into contact with Kev, and again, the relationship we now have is an unbelievable one, and one that's proves to me that there are people aligned with how I want to live my life now, and also to bring Liam into that as well, who falls into that pattern. The new people I've found within my life that are sharing values and sharing philosophies and mindsets just shows that you feel you're stuck sometimes, but the world's a big place. It can seem very small, but the world's a big place. So just sometimes ask yourself what you truly want, whether it's where you're at the minute or whether you need to make some changes. And if you do need to make some changes, find the courage, man. And if you find the courage to change, I can guarantee there'll be people that align with that change. And when you find those people, it's a fucking amazing thing. And I'm very blessed to have the people that are in my life right now. So guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and look out for episode number 8, because again, the guests that I've got lined up, I'm really excited about. Again, thank you guys. Have a good night. Mindset Tune Up number 7 wrapped up.